Every summer, it happens. You spend the spring planting a beautiful garden. Everything looks amazing in May. And then July hits, temperatures climb past 95 degrees, and plant by plant, your garden just gives up. Flowers fade. Stems go limp. Half the border looks like it forgot to show up. And the frustrating part? It doesn't have to be that way. Because there are plant-specific, scientifically vetted plants that don't just survive brutal summer heat. They thrive in it. They keep blooming when everything else is waving the white flag. Today we're going deep on 12 of them. And I don't just mean a list with pretty pictures. We're going to talk about why these plants handle heat at a cellular level, what's actually happening inside their leaves when temperatures spike, and most importantly, what you need to know to get the best performance out of every single one. Whether you're gardening in Zone 4 or Zone 9, dealing with drought, or just tired of replacing the same plants every year, stick with me. By the end of this video, you're going to have a completely different relationship with your summer garden. Let's get into it. Number 1. Echinacea purpurea, purple coneflower. We're starting with probably the most recognizable native perennial in American gardens, purple coneflower. This plant earns its place on this list because of one thing above all others: consistency. Coneflowers bloom from mid-June through late August. That's 8 to 10 weeks of continuous flowers with sporadic rebloom carrying all the way into mid-October. In Chicago Botanic Garden trials, the cultivar Cheyenne Spirit averaged 24 inches tall and 28 inches wide and was still pushing blooms in October. That's a long season by any measure. What makes it so heat-durable? Unlike some of its native cousins Echinacea pallida and angustifolia, which develop deep taproots, purple coneflower has a dense, fibrous root system. That root architecture lets it access moisture across a wider zone of soil, making it more adaptable to average garden conditions while still handling serious heat. Now here's something most gardeners don't know. If you've ever had coneflowers change on you over the years, different colors, Messier habits that wasn't your original plant reverting. What actually happened is that goldfinches ate the seeds from your plant and dropped them nearby. Those seeds germinated into new, genetically variable seedlings that quietly outcompete your original cultivar. Nature's sneaky like that. One important note for southern gardeners in zones 7 through 9: intense afternoon sun can actually bleach coneflower blooms and shorten their lifespan. Light, dappled afternoon shade in those warmer regions can genuinely extend how long each flower looks its best. Top cultivars to look for: Pica bella, for a tidy, sturdy habit; Cheyenne Spirit, if you want a mix of colors from seed; and Glowing Dream, for coral to magenta flowers that age gracefully without looking ragged. Number 2. Nepeta times Faucigny, catmint. If you could only plant one perennial for sheer, season-long reliability, catmint would be a very serious contender. We're talking about 14 to 18 weeks of continuous or repeat flowering mid-May through October. That's almost the entire warm season. And it does all of this in heat, in drought, with virtually zero supplemental fertilizer, and while still managing to be one of the top pollinator plants in the entire border. In comparative trials, Walker's Low attracted up to 3 times more bumblebees than average garden perennials. The science behind catmint's heat resilience is genuinely interesting. The leaves and stems are covered in glandular trichomes, fine hairs that are packed with essential oils, primarily a compound called nepentolactone. Those oils don't just repel deer and rabbits. They also reduce water loss through transpiration, helping the plant maintain its cellular hydration during hot, dry weather. And here's a piece of useful trivia. Catmint is closely related to catnip, same genus, same basic chemistry, but it contains much lower concentrations of nepentolactone. That means while it might attract a curious cat or two, it's far less likely to get flattened by neighborhood felines than true catnip. Your ornamental border is safe. The Chicago Botanic Garden evaluated 36 Nepeta taxa, and some of the most exciting results came from green roof studies. In environments with only 3 to 6 inches of soil depth, intense solar radiation, and constant wind, catmint not only survived but consistently earned top performance ratings. If it can handle a green roof in Chicago, it can handle your garden. One critical rule with catmint: drainage. Heavy, wet, poorly drained clay soils are how you kill this plant. If you're in heavier soils, amend generously with grit or gravel, and keep mulch away from the crown. Top cultivars: Walker's Low remains the industry standard, dense, mounding, not actually low at all. Joanna Reed is an exceptionally non-flopping variety discovered in Pennsylvania. And Little Tunny is a true dwarf, perfect for front-of-border and container work. Now, both of those plants need some maintenance to keep blooming, a little deadheading here, a shear there. But what if I told you one of the most floriferous plants on this list literally cannot stop blooming, and there's a chromosomal reason why? That's next. Number 3. Glandularia canadensis, Rose Verbena / Homestead Purple. This one has one of the best origin stories in American horticulture. In the 1980s, horticulturists Alan Armitage and Michael Deere were driving through a neighborhood in Georgia when they spotted a verbena growing at an abandoned homestead completely on its own, with no care, no irrigation, thriving in the heat. They took a cutting. What they'd found became Homestead Purple, now one of the longest-blooming, most heat-tolerant ground covers in American gardens. Here's why it never stops flowering. Chromosome analysis revealed that Homestead Purple is a sterile triploid. It has 3 sets of chromosomes instead of the usual 2, which makes it genetically incapable of producing seeds. And because it can't reproduce, it never redirects its energy into seed development. Every bit of the plant's metabolic resources goes straight back into producing the next round of flowers. 5 to 6 months of continuous bloom, from late spring until the first hard frost, without you having to deadhead a single flower. A single plant can grow 8 to 10 inches tall and spread up to 3 feet in its first season. As a ground cover for hot, dry slopes and sunny beds, it's almost unmatched. One important warning though: many nurseries sell pink, red, or white verbenas with Homestead in the name. But those are distinct selections that don't share the triploid genetics of the original purple form. They won't give you the same relentless flowering performance. If long bloom season is your goal, look specifically for Homestead Purple. Sharp drainage is non-negotiable. Wet winter soil is the primary cause of failure with this plant. In Zone 6, pair it with gritty soil or a raised bed and it'll return reliably year after year. Alright, we've got a ground cover that can't stop blooming because it can't make seeds. Now let's look at a plant that's built for a completely different kind of toughness, one that actually helps manage stormwater and survived on as little as 3.8 liters of water over 5 weeks in controlled trials. Number 4. Enothera lindheimeri, Gaura / wand flower. There's something almost magical about watching Gaura in a summer breeze. The flowers hover on wiry, arching stems and flutter like tiny butterflies, which is exactly why one of the most popular cultivars is called whirling butterflies. But the real magic here is engineering. Gaura's slender stems and narrow leaves are purpose-built to minimize water loss. It develops a deep taproot that anchors it against drought and pulls moisture from deep in the soil profile. In automated irrigation trials, containerized Gaura was grown successfully on as little as 3.8 liters of water over 5 weeks. That's extraordinary water efficiency for a continuously blooming perennial. The blooming season runs from late spring until the first hard frost, 5 to 6 months, with peak flowering in July and August, the hottest months of the year. Flowers open sequentially along those wand-like stems, so there's always something new without you having to deadhead constantly. Research has also identified a genuinely useful ecological role for Gaura. Its high transpiration rate and textured leaf canopy help absorb and retain rainfall, reducing urban stormwater runoff by 6 to 20% compared to non-vegetated surfaces. In green infrastructure terms, this plant is actually pulling double duty, looking beautiful and functioning as a hydrological asset. Here's a critical piece of information for northern gardeners. Gaura has a 68% winter survival rate in Zone 5 when plants are left uncut and mulched in well-drained soils. Cut them back too early in autumn, and that drops to 12%. Leave those stems standing until spring. It was recently reclassified from the genus Gaura to Enothera, the evening primroses, though interestingly, unlike most of its relatives that only bloom at night, wand flower blooms happily in full daylight. Top cultivars: whirling butterflies for the classic white, Siskiyou pink for rose-pink flowers from reddish buds, and crimson butterflies for a dwarf form with deep red foliage that provides exceptional contrast. Now we're going to shift gears slightly. The next plant isn't as architecturally dramatic, but it is one of the absolute workhorses of the summer border, and it has a genetic secret that makes some varieties far superior to others. Number 5. Hemerocallis times hybrida, reblooming daylily. If you want low-maintenance, high-impact color from late spring through autumn, it's hard to beat a well-chosen reblooming daylily. The key word there is reblooming. Because while almost every daylily will give you an impressive spring flush, Only certain cultivars are genetically programmed to push successive waves of flowers every 20 to 28 days through the rest of the season. Total flowering time, 10 to 16 weeks. The science that matters here is ploidy. Tetraploid daylily cultivars varieties with 4 sets of chromosomes instead of the standard 2 produce thicker leaves, sturdier stems, larger flowers, and crucially, enhanced carbohydrate storage in their root systems. That extra energy reserve is what allows them to initiate new flower buds more reliably during the stress of hot summer weather. Happy Returns versus Stella de Oro is the comparison that illustrates this perfectly. In side-by-side trials across 12 growing seasons, Happy Returns maintained a total blooming window of 98 to 112 days in Zone 6. Stella de Oro, same conditions, same care, managed 72 to 86 days. That's nearly a month's difference in bloom time. Happy Returns also shows superior resistance to daylily rust, which matters enormously in humid climates. Speaking of rust, when nighttime humidity exceeds 85% and temperatures stay above 82 degrees Fahrenheit, conditions become ideal for Puccinia hemerocalidus daylily rust fungus to germinate on leaf surfaces. This is a major issue in the southeast and mid-Atlantic. Rust-resistant cultivar selection is not optional in those regions. It's essential. One quick clarification: daylilies are not true lilies. True lilies grow from bulbs and produce all their flowers on a single stem. Daylilies grow from fibrous roots and generate successive flowerscapes from a central crown. Different plant entirely. Top cultivars beyond Happy Returns, on and on, for ruffled pink tetraploid flowers. Going bananas for an improved, large-flowered lemon yellow with exceptional red bloom. Daylilies give you waves of color. But the next plant on our list gives you something different. It's one of the toughest performers in bone-dry, lean soils. It has a fascinating mythology attached to it, and birds literally use it as medicine. Stay with me. Number 6, Achillea millefolium, yarrow. Yarrow is one of those plants that gets underestimated by gardeners who've never grown it, and fiercely defended by everyone who has. It blooms continuously from early June through September in flat-topped clusters of color white, yellow, gold, red, coral, peach with a strong secondary flush in early autumn if you cut it back. The finely divided, fern-like leaves minimize water loss under summer heat, which is why this plant handles drought as well as it does. From a botanical standpoint, yarrow is a facultative long-day plant. It initiates flower buds once day lengths exceed 14 hours in late spring, but the buds won't actually open until the plant accumulates roughly 450 growing degree days, a built-in seasonal timer that ensures blooming aligns with the right summer conditions. Here's the research angle that genuinely surprised me when I first encountered it: zoopharmacognosy. That's the scientific term for animals using plants to self-medicate. Studies have documented that European starlings and tree swallows actively select fresh yarrow leaves and weave them directly into their nests. The volatile compounds in those leaves function as a natural fumigant. In controlled nest box trials, incorporating just 5 grams of fresh yarrow foliage every second day significantly reduced blood-sucking flea infestations, confirming it has real biological insecticidal activity. Birds figured this out before we did. The name Achillea comes from the Greek hero Achilles, who according to mythology used the plant to treat his soldiers' wounds during the Trojan War. 2,000 years later, we're still studying why it works. One misconception worth clearing up: wild native yarrow does spread aggressively via underground rhizomes. But modern garden cultivars are bred to behave compact, clump-forming, no sprawling. Moonshine, for silver foliage and bright yellow. Coronation gold, for large golden heads that hold color exceptionally well in heat. Paprika, 4 dusty red flowers that deepen as temperatures cool in autumn. Avoid rich soils and shade. Either one will cause the stems to flop. Yarrow works on insects in the nest box. Our next plant works on itself using heat to produce compounds that protect its own cells from thermal damage, all while keeping its internal temperature in a stable, optimal range no matter what the thermometer says outside. Number 7, Agastache rugosa, anise hyssop/hummingbird mint. If you're trying to bring hummingbirds and pollinators into your garden and you haven't tried Agastache, you are leaving a lot on the table. Anise hyssop blooms mid-July through October 12th to 16th weeks with peak flowering in August, the absolute peak of summer heat. The flower spikes hold their color and structure even during extended heat waves, and the aromatic foliage which releases a sweet anise or licorice scent when brushed deters deer and rabbits as a bonus. The physiology here is remarkable. Research has shown that when root zone temperatures reach 28 degrees Celsius, that's about 82 degrees Fahrenheit, Agastache doesn't just survive the heat. It responds to it by ramping up production of protective compounds like rosmarinic acid and tillionin. These biochemicals neutralize heat-induced oxidative damage, essentially using the warmth as a cue to arm its cellular defenses. Beyond chemistry, Agastache physically regulates its own temperature. Studies show it adjusts its leaf thickness and density to manage high-intensity sunlight, maintaining a stable internal leaf temperature of 34 to 37 degrees Celsius, roughly 93 to 99 degrees Fahrenheit, even on the hottest days. That's efficient thermoregulation. The plant stays in its optimal metabolic range while everything around it is overheating. Critical care note: yellowing lower leaves combined with softening stems is not a drought signal. In Agastache, it almost always means overwatering or waterlogged soil. These plants evolved in dry, rocky habitats. They suffer quickly in wet ground. Top cultivars: Blue Fortune is a sterile hybrid that blooms continuously without setting seed. Queen Nectarine produces soft peach-orange spikes that are irresistible to hummingbirds. Blue Adder, 4 dense violet-blue color that holds well through the summer. One of the things I love about this list is how different each plant's superpower is. Agastache biochemically arms itself with heat. The next one can handle what most perennials absolutely cannot: the salt and chemical runoff that's quietly poisoning urban soils across America. Number 8. Rudbeckia fulgida, black-eyed Susan/orange coneflower. Ask any landscape architect what their most reliable, year-after-year native perennial is, and black-eyed Susan is going to come up near the top of that list every single time. It blooms mid-July through early October 10th to 12th weeks with peak color in August. It handles clay, loam, and sandy soils. It naturalizes beautifully in mass plantings. And critically, it's one of the only ornamental perennials proven to tolerate the salt runoff from winter road treatments. Greenhouse research demonstrated that Rudbeckia fulgida can accumulate elevated concentrations of sodium and chloride in its tissue without experiencing severe foliar damage or a measurable drop in chlorophyll content. In urban bioretention performance studies, it maintained a 74% survival rate when subjected to high salinity stormwater runoff. Cities run on de-icing salt in winter, and that salt ends up in the soil around roadsides, parking lots, and bioretention cells. Rudbeckia handles it. Most perennials don't. The dark central cones also serve a winter ecological function. After the golden petals fall away, those cones persist as a food source for native seed-eating birds. Goldfinches in particular love them, which is reason enough to leave the stalks standing through winter. A common mulching mistake: don't pile mulch high against the base of the stems, what's called volcano mulching. It traps moisture at the crown and creates ideal conditions for rot. Keep mulch 2 to 3 inches deep and pulled back from the stem base. Top cultivar: Gold Sturm is the industry standard for a reason: reliable, floriferous, 2 feet tall. Little Gold Star is a dwarf selection perfect for containers and small borders. From urban resilience to pure garden beauty, next up is a plant that has a floral trick most gardeners never notice, and one that can extend your garden's visual interest for weeks beyond when it's actually blooming. Number 9. Stella de Oro Daylily. Stella de Oro is a compact, mounding perennial. At full maturity, it reaches somewhere between 11 and 24 inches tall, and it spreads about 12 to 24 inches wide. The foliage is arching, grass-like, and bright green, almost like a fountain of straps flowing outward from a central point. Above that foliage, the flower stems called scapes rise up and fan out, each one carrying anywhere from 12 to 20 individual flower buds per stem. The flowers themselves measure about 2.75 inches across and are a rich, vibrant golden yellow color ruffled at the edges, with a slightly deeper yellow-green throat. They also carry a subtle, sweet, lemon-like fragrance. Not overwhelming, just enough to notice when you walk past. And because of all those traits combined: small size, long bloom, tough constitution, the plant is insanely versatile in the landscape. You can use it as edging along a walkway or driveway, where it softens the hard geometry of the concrete without spilling over into foot traffic. You can mass plant it in large drifts on a steep slope where it's nearly impossible to mow. The interlocking root system grabs the soil and holds it against erosion like a net. It works beautifully in cottage gardens alongside salvias, coneflowers, and coreopsis. It thrives in containers on a patio or balcony. The single most important rule with Stella de Oro: it needs sun. Real sun. We're talking a minimum of 6 to 8 hours of direct, unobstructed sunlight per day. Now, in the northern United States, zones 3 through 7, you want as much sun as you can give it, from morning to evening. The more light it gets, the more flower stems it produces. It's a direct relationship. In the deep south, those zones 8 and 9, there's a nuance. Think of it like this. In the south, all-day brutal sun is actually too much of a good thing. One hard rule: if your plant is getting less than 4 hours of direct sun, it will survive, but it will barely bloom. The plant needs solar energy to fuel those flower cycles, and without enough of it, it simply won't invest in reproduction. Number 10. Gaillardia times grandiflora, blanket flower. Blanket flower might be the most heat-hungry plant on this entire list, and that is saying something. It blooms from June through late October, 5 to 6 months of near-continuous flowering in vivid shades of red, orange, and yellow that look like they've been turned up to maximum saturation. It doesn't need deadheading to keep blooming, though removing spent flowers keeps things tidy. It thrives in poor, sandy, lean soils where premium perennials would fail. And it's rated for zones 3 through 10, nearly the entire continental United States. Now here's the biochemistry that makes this plant's flower colors so extraordinary under intense sun. The red and orange pigments are produced by carotenoids and anthocyanins. Under high solar radiation, the plant ramps up production of these pigments to protect the delicate reproductive structures of the flower from UV damage. Plants grown in full, hot sun produce measurably deeper, more saturated colors than those grown in partial shade. Essentially, more sun stress equals more pigment production equals more vivid flowers. The heat makes it more beautiful. Chromatographic analysis confirms a high concentration of carotenoid pigments in blanket flower's floral tissue, functioning as a natural light screening shield that allows the plant to bloom reliably under conditions that would fry many other ornamentals. Critical winter care tip: do not cut blanket flower back in late autumn. The foliage insulates the crown from freezing temperatures. Remove it too early and you raise the risk of winter kill significantly. Wait until you see new shoots in spring. The absolute non-negotiable: drainage. Heavy clay that stays wet in winter will kill this plant. Sandy or gravelly soil is ideal. In heavier soils, raise the bed or amend aggressively. Top cultivars: Arizona Sun, compact, award-winning, large red flowers with a bright yellow band. Mesa Yellow, 4 pure, clean yellow on compact plants. Before we get to our final two plants, I want to go back to native ecology for a moment because one of the most impressive performance stories in this whole video belongs to a plant that actually defends itself from fungal attack using the same antiseptic compound that's in your mouthwash. Number 11. Monarda fistulosa, wild bergamot/bee balm. Wild bergamot is not a showy plant in the way blanket flower or coneflower is. Its flowers are unusual, spidery, textured, lavender-purple pom-poms held on upright stems. But if you're serious about building an ecologically rich garden, few plants deliver as much wildlife value as this one. It blooms July through September 8th to 10th weeks with peak color in mid-July. It handles clay, loam, and sandy soils. It's drought-tolerant once established. And it attracts bees, butterflies, and hummingbirds at levels that make it one of the most ecologically active perennials in the summer garden. Here's where it gets genuinely interesting. The foliage of wild bergamot is loaded with thymol, the same active compound that makes commercial antiseptic mouthwash work. Under high summer heat and humidity, the plant releases thymol from fine hairs on its leaf surface. This compound prevents powdery mildew spores from germinating on the leaves, giving the plant a chemical defense against one of its most common problems. This matters because powdery mildew Ericife siceracerum is a serious threat to bee balm in humid climates. The more common Monarda didyma, the scarlet bee balm with red flowers, is notoriously susceptible. Wild bergamot is naturally more resistant, and selecting disease-resistant cultivars amplifies that advantage further. One important distinction: Monarda didyma, the scarlet bee balm, needs consistently moist soil to thrive. Wild bergamot is a prairie native. It evolved in dry, open glades and handles hot, dry conditions with ease. They are not interchangeable in a low-water garden. Top cultivar: Claire Grace, rated highly at MT Cubicenter with up to 80% flower coverage and superior powdery mildew resistance. Pardon My Purple, for a dwarf front of border option. Division every 3 to 4 years keeps the clumps vigorous and prevents spreading rhizomes from crowding out neighboring plants. And now to close out our 12 a plant with an origin story rooted in a 1965 discovery that changed the entire perennial market, a needle-like leaf structure purpose-built for summer heat, and a track record at MT Cuba Center that speaks for itself. Number 12, Coreopsis verticillata, threadleaf coreopsis. We're closing with what might be the most elegant plant on this list and one of the most underused. Threadleaf coreopsis produces masses of starry, bright yellow flowers from mid-June through late August 8th to 10th weeks with a strong secondary flush if you shear it back in midsummer. The foliage is unlike anything else in the border. Fine, needle-like, whirled around the stem. It's that leaf structure that makes it so heat-tough. By reducing the surface area available for water transpiration, the plant maintains its cellular moisture and keeps photosynthesizing when broader-leaved plants begin to shut down. The discovery that changed everything came in 1965. A grower named Donald Allen at Skycleft Gardens in New Hampshire found a seedling with unusually pale yellow flowers, a sterile hybrid between Coreopsis verticillata and Coreopsis rosea. He named it Moonbeam. It turned out to be exactly what the market had been missing: a native, well-behaved, compact coreopsis with a neat habit and continuous summer flowers that didn't spread aggressively. Moonbeam went on to win Perennial Plant of the Year honors in 1992 and opened the door to an entire era of native hybrid breeding. In long-term evaluations at MT Cuba Center, Zagreb, a compact, golden yellow cultivar, expanded its root mass by just 2.5 feet over 3 seasons. That's the definition of well-behaved for a ground-covering perennial. It fills in steadily without ever becoming a problem. One misconception to clear up: shearing Coreopsis back in summer does not ruin its autumn flowering. It does the opposite. Cutting the plant back removes older, spent foliage and triggers a flush of fresh growth and a new wave of flowers that often carries right to the first hard frost. Top cultivars: Zagreb, for the most reliable, compact, golden performance. Moonbeam, for soft, pale lemon yellow. Creme Brulee, for slightly larger, butter yellow flowers on sturdy stems. So there you have it, 12 perennials that don't just survive summer heat, they were built for it. Whether you're working with clay, sand, drought, salt, humidity, or all of the above, there's something on this list that belongs in your garden. If I had to narrow it down to a starter trio for any new garden: purple coneflower for native pollinators, catmint for sheer season-long reliability, and black-eyed Susan for adaptability across almost any soil and climate. Those 3 alone will carry your border from June to October. See you in the next one.